But there are lots of calls that wouldn't necessarily need to be taken to A&E by ambulance that come in for us. And
give me an example.
So I've had a call where a child is at a birthday party and they'll have injured themselves. And there are maybe 15 parents there, all with vehicles, who could take the child in if it's a minor injury, but they'll call for an ambulance. And it's kind of a gut response, especially when it's a child, to think, well, we need to have somebody here. But actually, if you're all there with cars, you could probably get the child there quicker if it's a minor injury than it would take for the ambulance to get there and then to get to A&E. People seem to be kind of be under the impression that because you come in by ambulance, you get seen quicker. And that's not necessarily the case either. Even if you're brought in by ambulance, you have to be triaged.
And are you talking about really, really minor injuries that you've come across?
Bumped knees, broken toes.
And they're ringing an ambulance?
Yes.
And in your experience, does that include fairly well-educated people as well being daft about this?
Yeah, I think you never really know how you're going to react, and everybody's emergency is different. So if that's the worst thing that's happened to you, it's really pleasing that it is, but it's not a medical emergency.
It's hard to believe, really, isn't it, that the common sense of just getting in your car and going isn't in place?
No, and unfortunately, the protocol that we have doesn't account for people who don't necessarily need an ambulance. It's very clever in because we're the call handlers, we're not medically trained. So not being clinical, we have a card set of 36 cards, which everything is covered by, and it triages, it generates a code based on the questions that you answer, which is sent through to the dispatch team, who have a long list of codes, and based on how most likely you are to need medical attention immediately, they arrange the ambulances by that response. But it assumes that everybody's call is completely genuine and completely in need, and doesn't account for people who phone in who don't necessarily need to.
It doesn't account for silliness. There's no algorithm for silliness. Yeah.
Yeah, like a Darwin card. You don't have the opportunity to say, you don't necessarily need us. You could probably make it your own way. But we are putting things in place now to account for that, because when I started 7 years ago, we used to take about 2,000 calls a night and think that was busy. And now we take over 4,000. And we're having to put things in place now to accommodate.
And have you seen an increase in waiting times for you taking the call and an ambulance getting to someone in real need?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's for our C2 responses, often when on shift, we're having to advise an ambulance response will be with you as soon as possible. However, due to high delays on the service, we are experiencing potentially 20 minutes before we're able to get to you for what could be a very real medical emergency.
And what do your colleagues say could improve this? You know, when you're bound to chat about it, because it can't be easy for you to be. I've seen that series. I think it's just called 999, is it, or 999 ambulance?
999 what's emergency.
That's right. Yes, and I'm always in awe at the calm, detailed and pragmatic approach that you all take to the conversation. Obviously, it's training, but you're dealing with really extreme situations sometimes. So if you feel that you're not able to serve someone in distress, that must be difficult for you.
Absolutely, yeah, it is. And when you can hear, even when it's not imminent, that it's imminent care that's required, having to tell somebody who's panicked for their loved one anyway that for a C3 response, there could be a 3-hour delay. It's heart-wrenching, because you know that even though it's not necessarily a medical emergency, it's an emergency to them.
What do you think would improve things? More ambulances?
Well, yeah, more ambulances, definitely, but then more staff, definitely. And it's a kind of a calling job. I think you have to. It has to be something that you want to do, and there's definitely a staff shortage. But public information would also help, knowing when to phone an ambulance and what is an emergency. And from our point of view, we are putting things in place to improve the protocol as well, to make sure that it does take into account that what's an emergency for one person may not be an emergency for A&E.